Good morning, children. Today we have a beautiful lesson from your Unit 4, The Curse of the Queen. It is from the unit The World of Mystery and Intrigue. So, intrigue means curiosity. So, mystery means secret. So, always we have been finding the previous or ancient things as very mysterious one and curious one. So, here the same kind of one lesson we get. This is about the story this is the story about the Egyptian queen Hatshepsut, and people believed that still her spirit is alive and it causes many damages to the people who trouble her from getting rest. Her curse claimed many lives that people believe. So here we are going to read about that mummy, or that uh, the dead body of that lady. Before that, we will learn about one more coffin or one more mummy brought up by the historians. So let's start the lesson. Here we start reading the lesson first. The first paragraph, let's read. The whole world was amazed when British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the surprisingly well preserved tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. It was not only the first major discovery of its time, but also the only tomb of its era that was found intact and full of indescribable treasures. The rumors of a mysterious curse helped make Tutankhamun the most popular of the Egyptian pharaohs in the modern world. So here, let's learn what is that mummy, or what is that pyramid, or what is that mummification. So here, mummy means the dead body of a person which was preserved long back under the ground inside of a pyramid. So here, the Egyptian had a belief that even the people will get their life after the death. They live their life even after the death. So to support that, they used to bury these bodies after some preservatives are applied on the body, so that to keep the body very fresh for a long time. So in that way they used to apply the preservatives and they used to keep the bodies inside of the pyramids. So along with that, they used to keep all the jewelries, all the things what the person used in his lifetime, believing that the people will have the life even after the death. So here we see a British archaeologist Howard Carter bringing the mummy of the at the time King Tutankhamun, which was buried under a ground and in a pyramid. So this Howard Carter, the British archaeologist, brought this mummy up in 1922 and he uncovered it for the whole world. It was only the first major discovery of its time, but also the only tomb of its era that was found intact and full of indescribable treasures. So, in this mummy, what was the special? It was the very big one, very major one. Also, it was undamaged, means nothing had happened until it was brought up. It was the same how it was buried down at the time. So, it had many treasures, many golden and silver articles inside. The rumors of a mysterious curse helped make Tutankhamun the most popular of the Egyptian pharaohs in the modern world. Pharaohs means kings. So that the stories which made the Tutankhamun very famous, or the mummy of Tutankhamun very famous, were the mysterious curse these people, these bodies have. So now let's learn more about this mummy. The curse of the mummy began when many terrible events occurred after the discovery of King Tut's tomb. According to a legend, anyone who dared to open the tomb would suffer the wrath of the mummy. Mummies have been associated with the many magical powers throughout history, and some of the mummies from Egypt were ground into a fine powder and sold as this mystical mummy powder. It's believed the powder had magical healing powers. So here, when Tutankhamen's tomb was discovered, when his mummy was brought up, the people started preparing some stories about this. What were the stories? Main story was, it was believed that these people, these tombs or these dead bodies have a power to curse the people who disturbed them from their deepest restoring. bodies were buried inside, and these bodies required full silence and full solitude. Here, what happens when they were brought up, the people believed that these dead bodies will curse the people for bringing them up and disturbing them. So, this made this Tutankhamun's tomb very famous. And even some incident also took place which supported the people's belief. So, mummies have been associated with the many magical powers throughout history, and some of its mummies from Egypt were ground into a fine powder sold as the mystical mummy powder. So some of them even they made the people to believe that these mummies have some magical power, mystical power. Mystical means spiritual power, very extraordinary power. So what they did, they ground these bodies into powders and sold the powders, saying that the powder had magical healing power. Whatever disease you have, these mummies will cure. So in that way, these powders were sold. Next paragraph. The curse of Tutankhamun's mummy, or popularly known as the Pharaoh's curse, was soon pronounced a myth. There are people who argue that the buried secrets of ancient Egypt are dead and gone. They claim that there are no hidden terrors beneath the shifting sands of northern Africa. So here, the curse of Tutankhamun's mummy, or popularly known as the Pharaoh's curse, was soon pronounced a myth. So here we see this story of Tutankhamun's was considered as a wrong or just an imagination. The people finally they understood that it's all just an imagination, nothing special in Tutankhamun's uh, um, dead body. So in that way, they felt that all those stories were told as the part of this culture. That's all, nothing else special in that they thought. So that's about Tutankhamun. Now let's learn about the next paragraph where we are going to learn about one more queen called Hatshepsut, and it's believed that she was very strong and even she cursed the people after a long time of bringing her up also. So let's learn about her. Let's read. 3,500 years ago, an Egyptian queen was laid to rest. She was prepared for her afterlife by the embalming method of mummification, just as it was dictated by the ancient laws in the Holy Book of the Dead. All her royal possessions, which included her slaves and handmaidens, were buried with her, as it was believed that she would need all her possessions and servants to attend to her needs in the afterlife. The priests had asked the workers to bury her deep so that her tomb would lie undisturbed under the blowing sands and African skies. And there she remained until the late 19th century. So here we see one more Egyptian queen's body was brought up. So what was that? 3,500 years ago, around 3,500 years ago, there was an Egyptian queen called Hatshepsut. She was passed away and her body was buried down after the preparation of the body. What for it was prepared? It was prepared for the afterlife after the death. How did they prepare the body? The servants of the queen and the civilians of that Egypt prepared her body with all the embalming procedure. Embalming method. Embalming means applying some preservatives on the body and burying them down. So in that way, the mummification used to take place at the time. The procedure of keeping the body preserved after applying the balm was called as mummification, and it was kept inside of the pyramid. Along with the body, even some royal possessions like the jewelries, the other things, other important things, and even the slaves, handmaidens, her pet animals, everything was kept inside along with her dead body and buried down. So, the priests who performed the final rituals of the queen asked the workers to bury her deep so that her tomb would lie undisturbed under the blowing sands of African skies. So they felt that it should be buried down so that she can take proper rest under the ground. And there she remained until the late 19th century. So from the BCE period, from the BCE period to till 19th century, her body remained inside of the earth. So now let's learn what happened later on. The year was 1890. The year was 1890, and as four young Englishmen were observing the ongoing excavations at the Luxor site, a foreman in charge of the laborers approached them and made a strange offer. He said that he would give them an extraordinary memento for a certain price. It was the marvelously handmade gold inlaid sarcophagus of a former queen of Egypt, Queen Hatshepsut. So here we see some excavation going on. Excavation means what? Excavation means digging the earth up and getting the things from inside. To prove some incidents in history, we need the proofs, and they are called as archaeological sources. And the same archaeological sources were excavated from the Egypt in 1819. So at the time, four Englishmen were supervising that work and standing near. At the time, a foreman means a manager of that work, he came up and asked the British officer to buy something from him. What was that? It was an extraordinary memento, means a coffin of a queen, a dead body. And he said that he would give it to these people for a price, a certain price. For certain money, he would be giving it to these people. It was the marvelously handmade gold inlaid sarcophagus of a former queen. What's special about that? It was a sarcophagus. Sarcophagus means a stone coffin. Stone coffin means where the dead bodies were kept, the box made up of stone where the dead bodies are kept inside. So he said that he is going to sell a sarcophagus which is of Egyptian queen Hatshepsut. The four young adventurers could not ignore such an opportunity. They drew lots to see who would win the prize. The winner paid several hundreds of pounds and had the coffin shipped to his hotel in his Cairo immediately. As many such opportunities don't easily come along. So these four young adventurers, four Englishmen, could not say no for that offer. They thought of taking an opportunity, and they drew lots to see who would win the prize. So finally, the winner paid several hundreds of pounds to that foreman and bought the coffin. So he carried this coffin to Cairo with a ship. So in a ship, he carried this coffin to his hotel in Cairo. So Cairo is a city in Egypt, and he managed to carry that coffin through a ship to Cairo. So here there is a hotel where he stayed, and it was brought to the hotel. As many such opportunities doesn't easily come along. So he felt that he got an opportunity and he didn't want to lose it. So he carried that coffin to his hotel in Cairo. Next, the very next day, the first tragedy struck. One of the four men was mysteriously shot in the arm by an Egyptian manservant. The wound was such a terrible one that the arm had to be amputated. So here, as soon as the coffin was brought into the hotel, there was a tragedy took place. First a tragedy struck. What happened? So one of the Englishmen, these four men were there, and one of the men was shot by an Egyptian manservant. So there was a servant in the hotel, and he shot the one with this Englishman. The wound was such a terrible one that the arm had to be amputated. Amputated means to cut off. So when the manservant shot the Englishman, his arm was badly injured, and the arm to be amputated. So the people believed that the curse of queens had started. Upon returning to England, the curse followed the second man in the party. He discovered that the bank where he kept all his savings had failed and he was left penniless. In less than a month's time, another of the four lost his position in the company he had worked at for a few years. He didn't get a decent job anywhere and was forced to make a living selling matchboxes on a street corner. So here, after the excavation, all the four men returned to England. Now, one more person from that group, now he had to face some other danger. What was that danger he faced? He faced the danger of losing all his money, which was preserved, which was saved in a bank. And all the money went off, and he remained without any money. He got reduced to a very beggar condition, and within a month of time, even he had lost his job in the company, and nowhere he could get a new job. So finally, he started selling the matchboxes on street corners. Now he started selling the matchboxes on street corner, and he became very, very poor. So now let's see then what happened. Meanwhile, the coffin slowly approached England. Queen Hatshepsut's mummy sailed towards Britain in a British merchant ship. So now here, the coffin still remained in Egypt. Now it's taken to England, where the Englishmen belong to. So now it is shipped and started moving towards Britain in a ship, merchant ship. Now let's see then what happens. Seeing the terrible things happen to his companions, the purchaser of the sarcophagus hurriedly arranged for the sale of the artifact to a London merchant, for he feared greatly. So the real purchaser of the coffin still is alive and nothing had happened to him. So now he's so scared of seeing the fellow men suffering with some dangers. So he thought of selling it to someone. He was not dare to keep this at any cost with him. So he had decided to sell it. So he found a purchaser to purchase this sarcophagus, and a London merchant was ready to buy this. So, next paragraph. The merchant took possession of the royal coffin on the docks of Liverpool. As it was being unloaded, a winch slipped and a heavy wooden crate crashed to the docks, killing two longshoremen. So here, the businessman or London merchant was about to buy it, and it was shipped towards London. So here, the merchant came to the place where it was about to land, and he was about to take the possession of this mummy. As it was being unloaded, a winch slipped and a heavy wooden crate crashed to the docks, killing two longshoremen. So here, it was about to be taken off from the ship. At the time, a winch means a goods lifting device. So it slipped, and the wooden crates fell down on the people who were standing nearby. The longshore means the people who work at the shores, who carry the goods, who loads the ships, who unloads the ships. So those people, it fell on, and four longshoremen died. So one more worst incident took place, and people strongly believe that it's the work of the queen. So now, next paragraph. Within 3 weeks of accepting delivery of the accursed coffin, the merchant rid himself of its evil by donating it to the Royal British Museum. During the 3 weeks he owned the coffin, several of his family members had become severely ill, and a minor fire had erupted in his house. So here we see the merchant purchasing this coffin or sarcophagus. Here also many incidents took place which proved that still the curse of the queen is going on. So what happened during the 3 weeks? The purchaser owned it. At the time, severe damages took place for his family members. Many of them fell ill. Even there was a fire took place and erupted the house, destroyed the house. So even the purchaser is so scared of this sarcophagus, and he wanted to hand it over to somebody else, but nobody wanted to buy it since they were aware of the curse of the queen. So what he did, he donated it to the Royal British Museum. Even though he bought it for a very large amount of money, he could not sell it once again for the same money. But he could not keep this sarcophagus with him also, since it was so dangerous. So just he donated to the Royal British Museum. So there was a museum in England and he donated it to the museum. Let's see what happened then. By now, the sarcophagus of Queen Hatshepsut had become the talk of the city, yet the museum agreed to take the sarcophagus for display in its famous Egyptian section. So now, the sarcophagus of Queen Hatshepsut became very famous in the city of London, and the museum people were ready to take it and display in their museum. Next paragraph. As the coffin was being unloaded from a wagon in the courtyard of the museum, an axle gave way and the heavy wagon bed injured a woman passerby. She had to be rushed to a nearby hospital. The mishaps did not end there. Two workmen carrying the coffin up the steps into the museum slipped and one of them fractured his leg. So here again some mishaps are taking place. Mishaps means some dangerous things. So here when it was brought to the museum, the coffin was being unloaded from a wagon. Wagon means it's a cart, a kind of cart. So it was being unloaded at the time. The axle of that cart broke down and a heavy wagon bed injured a woman passerby. There was a woman walking near this museum and she was hurt by the axle which cut off from the wagon. So she was taken to the hospital and there was a serious condition of her was noticeable. And even the workmen who were carrying the coffin, they were slipped and one of them fractured his leg. When these workers were carrying this sarcophagus to the upstairs room, one of the worker slipped from the staircase and he fractured his leg.